I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. This is makeup history, and I'm very, very pleased and proud to be part of this very historic event. And what is the event? Well, it's the interview that I'm about to conduct for you with Mr. Mike Westmore. Mike, thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
It's my pleasure, indeed. This is a very famous book, The Westmores of Hollywood, written by your uncle, Frank Westmore, who I actually made up when he was promoting this book. He came on ABC on the Good Morning LA show, and he sat in my chair, and I can't tell you how nervous I was as a kid to do his makeup. You know, the old Max Factor tan #2 pancake. And he said, just, I don't need anything. And I said, well, maybe just a little pancake. I had to do his makeup, you know. Even though I was nervous, I just had to do Frank's makeup, and he was such a great guy. Speaking of all the Westmores, and by the way, all of you out there, if you do not have this in your library, you must get it. It is really a fantastic book, and it outlines the entire history of the Westmore family. And we're going to have information as to how you can purchase this book online right after the interview, so stay tuned and you'll be able to get that information. But this book is great, but now I have the real thing sitting in front of me here, the man whose blood is the Westmore blood and who's part of that famous family. Let's go back. Your grandfather, obviously, he passed away prior to your being born.
Yes.
And but you must have, growing up with all the sons, your uncles, heard so many stories about George and what he did and how he taught them. What was George Westmore, your grandfather, what was his relationship with Max Factor, with the Max Factor company?
Well, George, in the very beginning, was a wig maker himself. Stories go that he used to make wigs for the prostitutes in trade instead of money.
He had quite a life.
It might be in the book.
Yeah, it's quite a life here.
And then the Factors came into town, and it was basically person earned that started working for the Factors as very young wig makers and as very young men. And they actually were making the wigs for Factors up to the point when they decided to part. The story goes that Purse was supposed to become almost like a partner in the company. And the Factors...
With Factor?
With the Factor, yes. And with the Factor family.
Yes.
And it didn't come through. So Purse said, goodbye, I'm going to go start my own, of which the House of Westmore developed out of that. And he went and he got the rest of the brothers, and they opened the salon, and it broke off. But they still... Purse actually sold the wig making, the technique to the Factors for like $1. It was, they were very close.
Yes. I understood that Factor actually pulled the two of them together and called the wigs that they were designing the Purse-earn.
Yes.
Purse-earn.
Those labels, if you found one of the old wigs, those labels would be in the wigs.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's really great. And it's my understanding also that your grandfather, George, actually invented or brought from Europe the lace, the technique of actually tying the hair onto the lace.
The Factors didn't.
And he invented the lace.
They actually, that and then Purse is also credited with further development on that, to the point where most of the wigs were very heavy, very thick. The Factors were doing prior to that. But with Purse's redevelopment of the idea of hair lace to make the hair look like it's growing out of the head. This was a big breakthrough. You know, like things we have today, packs, and silicone. The hair lace wig was a monumental breakthrough in the cosmetic world, not only in the world of fashion, but then starting to work with the studios in the old silent days. This became the norm of these great wigs that were made.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't believe that there was anyone on camera during those days, and you can see by seeing the old films, that weren't wearing at least a hair lace front. You know, to do it. Let me ask you this: growing up with your uncles, obviously you saw each of them working, you heard them talking, you got a sense for which were really passionate about makeup artistry and which perhaps may have just gotten into makeup artistry because it was expected of them to do so. Of all of these uncles, which do you consider to have been the most dedicated and the most talented to makeup artistry?
Well, according to the stories that I heard along the way, my father was actually the best and the most passionate of all of them.
This is Mont.
Yes, Mont Sr. But of course, he passed away when I was 18 months old. And the last picture he did was Gone with the Wind, which helped kill him.
I can see.
Oh,
what a picture that must have been.
Long hours and everything. The thing is, each one of them, I think the reason why the family was so successful along the way is that each one of them took over a major studio and stayed there for decades. Yes. So if they hadn't been able to run the studio, and each one of them is credited, although they had great makeup artists working for them, each one is still credited with the great talent that they did. It's like Perse was, I would say, out of all of them, was the leader of the group.
This is what I've always felt.
Perse was, yes.
Perse is always mentioned as being that man that was so passionate.
Well, he loved publicity.
Yes.
He loved so, and he also loved to invent. Perse was a person that would go to bed at 7 o'clock at night and get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yes. And at that time, he would do his thinking. I had conversations with him in later years, how that's when he would be able to clear his mind and figure out how to do something that was bothering him that hadn't been done yet. And then by the time the telephone started ringing, of course, you have to go to work. But that was his routine and his schedule. And of course, he had his own chopsticks at Trader Vic's, and he had the house at Westmore, and and you see pictures of he was married 5 times, and half of those were to actresses, so it's he was Perse rubbed shoulders with the biggest actors and performers of the day.
Let's run down here. You had Mont, your father, who was head of David O. Selznick, I believe. There was Perse, who did Warner Brothers. There was Wally.
No, Ern, Perse's twin.
Yes.
And Ern was at RKO. And Eagle Lion.
Yes.
And then
Wally.
But before that, and then Ern, though, he left the studios to go into door-to-door sales.
Holiday Magic.
Holiday Magic.
That's right.
Which was the first door-to-door cosmetic sales. Then there was Wally at Paramount. And he was there for years and he was very close with Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, Dorothy Lamour, all the people that were there.
Let me ask you this question about Wally. There was a film made in 1939 that starred Charles Laughton. It was called The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And is it true, because you would know, that George Bow was apprenticing at that time under Wally and was making the foam latex for Wally for the makeup that Wally did on Charles Laughton for The Hunchback? Were they working together at that time?
I think Bow was over at Warner Brothers.
But that was later.
Was it later?
This is when he was very young.
Charlie Gamora might have been there at the time.
Yes.
Because I know Charlie Gamora was the lab man for many, many years.
I thought, it was my understanding that George was there at that time,
it could have
or
been.
An apprentice. But why I'm bringing this up is because that was the makeup, outside of Frankenstein, we were all influenced by Jack Pierce's work. But that makeup was the first really sophisticated makeup that just drew me in as a kid. When I saw that makeup, I thought, oh my God, I've seen this actor before, and this portrayal and the hunchback and the eye and all. And then there was a film, a short news piece that I saw on one of the TV shows in Pittsburgh, and there was a video, it was a film of Wally actually showing how he did the makeup. And I don't think that he did the makeup the way he was showing it, because he had to do it a different way because it was, he actually was using the Dumo, the Natural Plasto Pierce wax It's gone through all. First it was Dumo, then it was Nitroplasto, now it's Pierce wax. He had this big lump of Pierce wax, and he put it on the face, and he was blending it in, and he had an artificial eye, and he put the eye in. He was working really fast. It was the most remarkable thing I'd ever seen. And as a kid, I said, "Oh my God, that's what I want to do. I want to be a makeup artist."
Yeah.
You know?
Wally was more department head, and his forte was beauty makeup.
Yeah.
But I know Perce was involved with the Hunchback because he told stories of Lawton had to get down on his hands and knees to be able to get the hump strapped on, to be able to really pull it in.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, yeah.
My God, what a monumental.
The brothers
work.
used to help each other. If a project went somewhere that the other one wasn't quite sure of handling,
Yes.
Usually Perce is the one.
Yes.
There was an old age makeup in '49 that Bud needed to do over at Universal.
Yes.
And Perce came over from Warner Brothers and helped him put it together in the morning.
George Westmore, again, we're going back to George. He was a wig maker to start, and then he gradually became a makeup artist, or went into makeup artistry. Did he study with anyone at that time, like Cecil Holland, who was supposedly the makeup artist of the day at MGM, or were there any others that he worked with?
No, there was a group of them that actually got together because they formed the first union, which is Local 706 today. But and all of these men, I mean, there wasn't such thing as a makeup artist.
Yes.
They were morticians.
Yes.
They were actors who had more fun putting makeup on than acting.
Right.
So it was this whole group of people, small group, that got together and interacted with each other.
Yes.
And because there was enough studios here and there that each one of them would wound up, in a different area.
Yes.
And so grandfather was in a position where he had his sons to be able to pass it on to.
Yes.
And hence the family growing and expanding where other families didn't.
Yes. What stories can you recall from your childhood that your uncles may have told you, that you've heard them talking, about your grandfather that you found to be the most fascinating?
Well, I really, in growing up, I was more or less isolated from the rest of the family. My mom went to work, and she worked at Warner Brothers, so I would go to Warner Brothers. So
what did she do?
She was a hairstylist for many years. The last thing she did is spent 9 years on the television show The Virginian, and she retired after that. But she traveled all over the world on movies. We had a lot of movie stars come to the house for holidays and things. They shot 6 days a week then, so I would go to work with her on Saturdays. But I mainly went to Warner Brothers, and Dennis Morgan and Janice Page and people like that. And of course, I was more interested in the ice cream machine than anything else, Warner Brothers was my playground. On Saturday.
How amazing!
Oh, it was a lot of fun. Wally, I would see once in a while. I would see him at Christmas time. We would go over there, or at Person's house. We'd go over and they'd have Christmas presents for us. But didn't really have any interaction or activity with them growing up until I actually became an apprentice at Universal. And then after that, then I really got in and met all of them.
Here you were, a young man, the son of a very famous makeup artist, member of this famous makeup family, able to visit the studios. When did it sink in that you wanted to do makeup, that you wanted to be a makeup artist and to carry on that family tradition?
When I was a senior in college.
Wow.
I was planning on being an archaeologist. I was going to go to Berkeley to do my graduate work.
Yes.
And
you went to Santa Barbara,
Santa Barbara,
USC.
right.
Yeah.
And Bud called me, and when I was a junior, and said, "I have an apprenticeship open. Would you like to do it?" And the main thing I wanted to do is I wanted to graduate. Nobody in the family had ever graduated from college, and I said, "Thank you very much, but not interested. If maybe when I get done." But the apprenticeship was open then.
Yes.
Had he taken somebody at that point, it wouldn't have been opened again for another 2 years after I graduated. So in the meantime, even Bob Crowley, who was an art director and is a cousin, Bob offered me an apprenticeship in the art department under Alex Galitzin at Universal, which Alex Galitzin is a very famous Academy Award-winning director.
This was when Universal was Universal International, was it not?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
And we're talking about 59.
Yes.
60.
Right.
So Bud called me back later and said, if I hold this job open for a year, now, I don't know, I think my mother was sticking a finger in his back on the other side. He said, if I hold this open for a year, will you accept the apprenticeship?
Yes.
I said, well, and I'm thinking, do I want to go to college? Do I want to go dig and get dirty in Egypt? Or do I want to go and try this? So I said, okay, yeah, I would love to. So when the time came, and I called Bud, and I said, well, I graduate on Monday, and I'm thinking, well, I have a month or two or something. And he says, great, take Tuesday off, and I'll see you Wednesday. So my apprenticeship literally started 2 days after I graduated. But
great.
prior to that, because I had never picked up a makeup brush, I had no idea I wanted to do it. So they happened to be doing a play of 3-penny opera at Santa Barbara. And I walked into the music department, and I said, I just introduced myself. Hi, I'm Mike Westmore, and I want to do the makeup on the play. Can I do that? And they're going, oh my God! And they were hoping I was a freshman.
Westmore.
Oh yeah. I mean, the teacher knew right away, knew the name. So they said, oh yeah. So I called Bud, and he put together a kit for me. Now there's like 40 people in 3-penny opera, and it started like at 7:30 at night. I started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I made up the entire cast for the whole run of the play.
Living up to the name.
Yeah, and I really had a lot. The interaction you have with the actors and with the makeup. I mean, it was really simple. It's like I had one color for the men, one color for the women. You know, nothing outlandish, and plenty of sponge and powder puffs. And it was just a lot of fun.
Right.
So then I was looking forward to getting into the studio
Right.
and having an apprenticeship.
Universal was that studio that did all the horror films during the 30s and the 40s, and then Bud took over Jack Pierce's position in 1947, the year I was born. And I can remember seeing, the name, and I believe it might have been the first time that the name Westmore really stood out to me since I saw on television Wally's name for the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Right. And when I'd see that name, Universal was that to me as a kid. That was the studio. That was the studio where the magic came from, the monsters. And I'd see the name Bud Westmore, and I'd go, "Oh my God, that's the god of makeup! This man is the head of makeup for Universal Studios. I want to work for that man." And he was. If I can recall, and you're going to find this funny. He was promoting, he was kind of the head promoter for a tooth whitening.
Smile On.
That's it.
I still have one.
No way.
I have one.
With his little picture on it.
Yep.
I was a kid, and I was making movies, 8mm movies, monster movies, and doing nose putty noses and whatnot. And my aunt used to let me use the cellar as my makeup studio. And you'd go down the steps into the cellar, right? And I cut out his picture, and I put it like right at the foot of the steps, so that every time I would go down there, I would see Bud Westmore's picture. And it would wow, that's someday I'm gonna be like that man, And so the name Westmore was that was it as far as I was concerned. I went to my mother's friend, whose husband was an attorney, and I said I would like to send a letter to Bud Westmore and to Max Factor, asking if what I have to do in order to be a makeup artist. How can I work at Universal? Can I work for Max Factor? And I sent 2 letters out, one to Max Factor, one to Bud. It was about 6 months later. Returned. I came back. It didn't come back. The answer came back from Bud Westmore. This letter, and we're going to show it on the screen right now. This is June 26, 1962. It is a very long and difficult process to become a makeup artist. Number 1, you have to be 21 years of age. Secondly, you must apply at the union in Hollywood for an application. And thirdly, the most difficult step is to be sponsored by a major studio. The waiting list for apprentices is always very long. At the moment, there are only 5 makeup artist apprentices in the whole of Hollywood. To become an apprentice, it takes more than talent. The individual must be able to stand pressure and at the same time retain a pleasant and harmonious personality. That is a line that I have taught to my students.
It's
through
true.
The years.
It's true.
It is so true. And I'll repeat this one more time for all you out there. The individual must be able to stand pressure and at the same time retain a pleasant and harmonious personality. This, he was referring to the apprenticeship program. but this also refers to makeup artists in general. When you're working in the industry, pleasant and harmonious personality. You must be able to tune in to everybody that you're working with and be liked, as well as do makeup correctly. Here's the line that got me. There are no schools for motion picture makeup. I looked at that and I went, no schools? Well, okay, then being an apprentice must be the only way, but if there's only 5, my God, there's going to be a shortage of makeup artists pretty soon. Somebody should do something about that. Somebody should be teaching this, not just 5 people at a time, but there should be, they're going to need an army of makeup people eventually because people are going to be dying off.
So the light went on.
So the light went on in my head, and this was, look, 1962, when I saw that. So, who started my schools? Bud Westmore.
Oh my gosh.
Bud Westmore lit the light in my head. So all my students around the planet, and the thousands of makeup artists who have graduated from my schools can thank Bud Westmore for lighting that light. And I understand you typed this letter.
I was secretary and bottle washer at that time until '63.
Is it true? Did Bud used to send the apprentices down to swab his boat deck? I've heard that story so many times.
He didn't have the boat then. I was the apprentice. I swabbed the boat then. they cut the lawns.
We're just setting the record straight here. They cut the lawns. That's great. Let's continue here. After an individual has been sponsored by a studio and approved upon by the union, he commences a 3-year apprenticeship program at a major studio. During the 3 years, he is taught the art of motion picture makeup, which is entirely different from stage makeup, boy, I'll say. And at the end of the 3 years, he is examined by a board of makeup artists as to the ability and quality of his work. As you can see, it is a long, hard climb. I wish there was something more definite I could tell you, but that is exactly how it is done. I wish you luck. Sincerely, Bud Westmore. It was a great letter. It was a letter that started it all. And I just, personally, being that I wasn't able to thank Bud, I want to thank you.
Oh, I will thank his wife.
Thank you.
Jean's still alive.
She is?
Yes.
Oh, I'd love to meet her someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be terrific if we could do that. I understand that you are a major, you are an art major, and alumni of the year?
I was.
Tell us about it.
I was. Well, at Santa Barbara, I really enjoyed my time there. And somewhere along the line, actually, it was before I won the Oscar, that I was invited to be Alumni of the Year in the field of the arts at the school.
Yes.
And it was interesting because Marion and I, we went up to the ceremony, and there was like 4 or 5 other people in front of me who were CEOs of giant companies, the mayor of someplace else, and I'm thinking, oh my God. And I was the last one to speak. And after they've given all these great talks of their accomplishments and everything, and I'm thinking, I got to be funny.
When was this? When did you do this?
Oh, it was back in the mid-'80s.
Oh.
Yeah, but it was just prior to winning the Oscar.
That's before all
I had won
all
several
the
Emmys by then,
sure.
but that was an
Let's talk about
accomplishment
that.
for the school.
How many Emmys have you won?
I have 9.
9 Emmys.
9
for makeup.
Emmys.
My God, that's
Well,
fantastic.
42 nominations.
42 nominations.
Yes.
They give a certificate, don't
Yes.
they? You could wallpaper a room with that.
It goes around the ceiling.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, it would have been nice if you'd brought, like V. Neal did. She had all this gold behind us. I would say that the two of you are almost, well, I don't know. You might have her outdone with all the gold.
Weight-wise, I think I'd better be.
We could exactly. We could have put all of them behind you here. Maybe that'll be the next time.
Good.
Here is something really spectacular that I think was incredibly long overdue, and that is obviously, you know what I'm going to talk about, the receiving the star on Hollywood Boulevard, the receipt of the star on Hollywood Boulevard. And this here, and MUA-TV went and covered the event, and I was very proud and pleased to be able to do that. This is the actual plaque that was presented to the Westmores, and it says here, a Hollywood Walk of Fame, and presented to the Westmore on the occasion of the placement of your star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame, October 3rd, 2008. And this was presented to the Westmores, and specifically to Mike Westmore, for the placement of that star for the Westmores of Hollywood. This is, as I said, that was a wonderful moment. It was a wonderful ceremony. and it was long overdue. What you got there?
I got some in here for you.
What do you-
So that's,
Oh my God!
yeah. Open that. I know you weren't able to attend, so
I had to leave. I actually went like 3 days before, and I stood on the site and did the opening for the show.
we've taken friends back
And-
since then.
You have?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh wow! What is this?
This is the invitation.
Oh,
And what we did,
There we go.
what we
Oh,
did
this
with
is
the,
beautiful.
what we did with the invitation.
something
This
else.
is yeah, there is.
See, this is the Westmore's of Hollywood announced the formal premiere of their Hollywood Walk of Fame star on Friday morning, October 3rd, 2008 at 11:30.
The print the print that's here.
Oh, this is
we
cool.
actually got the invitation. My cousin had it from the original opening of the House of Westmore.
You're kidding.
And my son Michael, in fact, some of this print isn't available. He actually built it in the computer,
Wow.
and it's laid out in the same print along the way as the original 1938 invitation.
Wow, how wonderful. That is so beautiful. Very classy. Amazing. You know, I did research, and when I started my school in my apartment, and then I had to move out of the apartment because my landlord said, what the hell, who are all these people coming here every night?
Yeah.
And so I found a place, and I went to find where the house at Westmore was. And it's on Sunset Boulevard at the address that we mentioned earlier. And there was nothing available there. I wanted to be either
Right,
in
close.
that building or close. So I went across the street to the crossroads of the world, and I put my school
Oh,
there.
that's right across the street.
And again,
Yeah.
because of the Westmore influence. So I felt I want to be close to where that
Yeah.
history occurred.
Yeah.
And that was where I first
Now,
started.
here's something else for you.
Oh my.
This is an exact copy
Wow.
of the star that's implanted
Oh,
in the cement,
how beautiful. If I can hold
and it's a
this
little
up.
pin.
Hold this up. There we go. On a film strip. This is absolutely beautiful. Excellent. And this is mine.
That's yours.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I'm honored. I'm very honored. I think that there's so much that we could be talking about. There's so
I know
many,
you can go on
so
for-
many
you can
things.
go on for days.
Yeah, I can, and I'm going to. So let me ask you about your apprenticeship at Bud. You know, I never met Bud. Never met Bud. I could kick myself in the ass for not having gone over to Universal. But I was so occupied by ABC Television, Rudy Horvatish, and Claude over at NBC, Claude Thompson. And then obviously with Ben Nye. I never went to Universal, and you would think that I would have because it meant so very much to me. But for some reason, I never went in that direction. But I worked as a representative for the RCMA company within Kehoe back in those days. And I can recall it was a thrill because I had already gone to MGM, and I had sold the entire RCMA line to Bill Tuttle. I think that's where he got the idea to start his own line. And at least that's what I've been told. and I called Bud on the phone. And I can recall hearing his voice and just knowing that I was talking to them,
Yeah.
the man that really, the name. And I tried to make an appointment to go to see him. But it was like in 1973, and he was not well. There was something.
When was it?
I think it was 73.
Okay, he had left
was-
Universal by then.
Well, it was before then.
Yeah, he left Universal in about 70.
Was it 71?
Oh, it was late 60s. Could have been 68, 69.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it must have been then.
Yeah,
It
because
must
he
have
had
been
had
then.
a lot of heart attacks.
Yeah. Because he didn't sound well. And that, it kind of hurt me a bit to hear his voice. Because I could tell that he wasn't well. And I honestly thought, I don't want to bother the man. But he did say, well,
He'd have probably loved to
give
have
me
you
a-
come over and talk.
yeah, I would have loved to have done that.
You think that about you don't
Yeah.
want to bother him, but
Right.
in reality, at that time, he really wasn't doing anything.
Yeah. But I thought, how great, here is this guy who's worked with every kind of makeup imaginable.
'Cause I-
And he's still open to hearing about a new product.
Right.
You know.
I did this with Jack Pierce. I walked up,
You
knocked
did.
on the door after he was retired, and it had to been 49 or 50 or something. And I introduced myself to him, and he said, "Come on in." And we sat in the den, and
At
he
his home?
chatted at his home, and he pulled out all the scrapbooks and the pictures and everything. I was there a couple hours.
Wow, how terrific.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Isn't it a shame that his last show was Mr. Ed?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know that the industry really, I mean, and now, honestly, I mean, we all talk about Jack Pierce and we praise him and we call him the father of makeup and on and on. But I don't know that in his lifetime he ever really felt that he was appreciated.
He didn't feel it. I know. I mean, then it's like, because it was the career took a different direction from.
Yes.
Of course, at that time, I don't think people looked on Frankenstein and Wolfman and things like that as the great classics that they're looked at
today.
As today.
Yeah, yeah. Now we have a great much more appreciation for it. You know, a lot of the times the makeup artists weren't even given credit because for some reason they just didn't want people to think that it was makeup. They wanted people to believe that these were real monsters.
Right.
You know, to get the effect that they wanted. You had to have been at Universal during the making of The List of Adrian Messenger.
I was there.
Now you've got to have tell me. How was it?
Well, it was made pre-Planet of the Apes.
How old were you when you were there?
I was about 28.
This is before you decided that you wanted to be a makeup artist?
Oh, no.
This is after. So you were an apprentice?
No. Yes, I was an apprentice. I was, let's see, 60, I think it was like 63. So it was in my last year of the apprenticeship.
I see.
And Bud had brought John Chambers over from the television studio. And the art department did lots of sketches, and they talked to, Kirk Douglas, going to be a Kirk Douglas film. And he was going to be wearing rubber faces through the entire movie. And of course, after a while of thinking, Douglas didn't want to wear a face every day. So they actually hired another actor with very similar facial features to Douglas, and we had to duplicate everything that was done for Douglas for Jan.
Yes.
And Jan Merlin played, I would say, more than half of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if there was no dialogue going on.
I think it was the same with Frank Sinatra.
Well, Sinatra never did it.
Yeah, he just came in at the end for the pull-off.
Oh, they gave him, he drove in. Oh, and then we tried to get him for face cast.
Yes.
He says, no, there's a sculpture of me over in Las Vegas. So they sent for the sculpture. They brought it to us, and here it's this bronze sculpture of of chiseled faces, totally unusable. So again, found somebody that had a similar face as Sinatra. Right. The mask was sculpted and molded on that face.
Yes.
And then the day Sinatra was coming in to do it for $25,000, was big money then, and he comes in, you're not going to glue that on me. Okay. So they kind of like just laid it onto his face, and you really couldn't shoot him straight on. Yeah. His scene starts with his back to the camera, and as he spins into the camera, he pulls the mask off and smiles. Right. Where's my check? I'm out the door. And somebody else actually played his part through the movie.
Amazing.
There was also Robert Mitchum, and Mitchum did all his own work.
He did.
Tony Curtis was in it. Tony Curtis did all his own work. John Huston, who was the director, was very good friends with Elizabeth Taylor. So he talked Elizabeth into doing the movie and playing this old sea captain. So Bud and John go to London to get all prepared to do Elizabeth, and she doesn't show up. They're ready to, she has a call time. She had gone to Europe because somebody told her, don't let them do that to you. It'll ruin your skin. So she went and she literally disappeared. So Taylor was never in the film.
Oh my.
Yeah, it would have been wonderful had she been.
Yeah. Oh my, to play the sea captain.
And then John and Bud were at the Dorchester Hotel in London, and they did the molding over there. They did all the work. So they kept flushing the plaster down the toilet, and they plugged up the pipes in the Dorchester Hotel. So, but I stayed at this time. I stayed back at the studio because we still had work to do at the studio.
Right. Were you running the department for him?
No, Nick Marcelino was there that was running the department, but I was the lab assistant under John. John's gone, so basically I am. Another wonderful old makeup artist, Don Cash Sr.
Oh, sure.
Was hired to run the foam. Yeah. So Don, though, said, come on, kid, you can run the foam. So Don would just kind of like sit there every day and he'd say, okay, now put out so much latex, now I put in so many grams of this, now turn the mixer on. And I did this day after day after, so I can run latex in my sleep.
Right.
But I literally ran latex every day. Every mold was made every single day to brush them down.
You know, I honestly feel that that's really the first monumental makeup picture.
Oh, it was, until Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
And then John, Danny stole John from Universal.
And Street Peg.
Yeah. And John, I took John's job then. It was very interesting because they wanted John to come. I didn't find this out for years. They wanted John to come to Fox a lot earlier. Too, but John and I had really bonded. He was like a big brother, father to me. We had lunch every day together.
Hey, lad.
Yeah, and he taught me.
Call you lad?
Oh yeah, and I still have to this day my book that I kept all my notes and everything. And John, he told me years later, he said, you know, I didn't leave the studio because of you. I told him I couldn't come. I wanted to make sure you finished your apprenticeship before I left.
He was a wonderful man.
Oh, he was. He was my mentor. John was my mentor, and I was his first, basically his first apprentice. And it's very interesting because some of the other makeup artists that he has mentored and worked with over the years, I would see how he would treat them. I mean, he would yell and scream at them and everything. John never raised his voice to me, and we did a lot of projects together. We did the lab work on Blade Runner and a lot of other.
Well, let's talk about Blade Runner. That was a remarkable film.
It was a very interesting film for its time with Ridley Scott doing it. And I said, and John and I were hired to come in to do the laboratory work. My brother was a supervisor on it. Marvin. And what's really fascinating with it is that everything that John and I did practically would have been an optical today.
Oh,
the breakings of the arm, the shooting the ear off on, when the ear came off, we actually glued one ear down, had a rubber ear over the top of it that was cut in half.
Yanked it.
It was on a piece of monofilament on the end of a fishing pole, and glued on with KY jelly, with tubes running up the back. I mean, the whole thing had to be timing, at the same time, and it would fit back together, you know, like a little puzzle.
How about the nail in there?
The nail in the hand. Oh, okay. The nail in the hand. Well, the nail with Rutger puts his hand up to the wall. And he takes a nail and he shoved the nail in. Well, I actually put Rutger's hand on the wall and cast it on the wall so it would be flat as opposed to something.
Brilliant.
And then I ran tubes up here in different directions on the palm of the hand. And then, of course, out the back to the. So when the hand went on the wall, hit it, and the blood would spurt out in different directions. Now, the day before it starts to shoot, Ridley says to me, he said, you know, can we do this? I want to see not the hand up there, I want to see the nail push through here and come out here and see the blood going. So the studio goes, what's that going to cost? I said, there's no way I can adapt this because this is ugly. The palm of the hand is ugly. It would mean going back and recasting everything and doing it all over from square one. And they're going, apparently they were so far over budget. They said, you got it the way it is and it's over with. So that's the hand. There was also another hand that we built that had copper, filaments of copper that ran down. So the finger is actually broken. And these were cut, so you could take the finger,
breaking his
put it back into shape again.
Yeah, how terrific.
So there were all these little
way
bits and pieces. I'm saying
you're way ahead of your time.
But today it had all been done in an optical machine.
You're right.
And that's what's missing. Some of the really fun parts. I mean,
of makeup
you've got your big aliens, and you've got the wonderful silicone age makeups going on, things like that. But all those little techniques like that, like when I did First Blood, I had all these little things like that with Stallone, the sewing up of his arm and things that, practical things that are gone now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and that's a shame. And you know, we're actually, because of that, you know, we're having to change many of our teaching techniques, you know, here at the school, so that we prepare these artists for the fact that, you know, this is how it's going to be. You know, they may ask you not to blend the edge because they're going to clean it up in post with CGI.
Yeah.
You know, which honestly to me I could never do. You know, I'd have to I could never send an actor in front of the camera without knowing that it was perfect, and not rely on some technician to clean up the edge. You know what we're going to do right now? We're going to break just for 1 minute. We're going to break for just 1 second. Don't you go away. We'll be right back with Mike Westmore right after this.